Hello, welcome. I'm Helen of Authentic Discovery, and this is season 2 of our Speak Your Truth conversations. This week I'm joined by Mark, and so I'm going to pass you straight over to Mark. Before I do that, actually, thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe, like, and all of those things. Mark, thank you for joining me. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, Helen. Thank you for having me. My name's Mark Stubbles, and I help people overcome anxiety and increase confidence through hypnotherapy and NLP.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about what took you into hypnotherapy and NLP?
Yeah, I grew up with a lot of anxiety issues, a lack of confidence, and I formed like dysfunctional relationships. Got into a marriage too young, and I got divorced at 28, which was like difficult, horrendous, because we had a daughter, and my ex-wife was from Slovakia. And then when we got divorced, she decided that she wanted to return to Slovakia with our daughter, which I wasn't keen on, and nor was my daughter. She was like 4 at the time. So anyway, so then we had like a 4-year legal battle, which was just like terrible. She stopped my child coming to stay with me on like 2 or 3 occasions, and we kept having to go back to court to address these issues. And so yeah, it cost me like loads and loads of money. The house got repossessed. No one benefited from it other than solicitors and the bank.
Yeah.
And it was just like senseless. And then I ended up living back with my grandparents. I'll tell you the full story. My grandmother, okay, so my mother was my grandmother's registered carer, and she was claiming a carer's allowance and taking the money to buy alcohol and go in the pub and like live it up basically, and doing nothing to help my grandparents. So she was getting carer's allowance from the government, and she was getting money from my grandparents. She'd come around in the morning and take money off one of them, and then she'd come back in the afternoon and take money off the other. And anyway, so I told my aunt about this, and then yeah, next thing I know, you know, my aunts and uncles are accusing me of stealing money from my grandparents, and like, yeah, it just yeah, it was just like, it was mad, right? It was just mad. So, and then just like weird stuff started happening. I ain't going into it.
No, you
but
don't.
it kind of made me realize. It made me realize that I had issues that were like a bit more than anxiety.
Okay. Okay.
So I started looking for ways to deal with these things, and I think that, you know, I had, as I say, I had formed dysfunctional relationships. I got married too young, basically because of my issues, and so I thought I better resolve this, or I'm just going to get into more mess. and that was when I started looking at hypnotherapy and NLP philosophy. Started becoming very interested in Alan Watts and things like that.
So it sounds as if you had a kind of the wounded healer comes to mind, that you in healing yourself, you then and with philosophy, sort of the meaning and purpose of life kind of gets into there a little bit, I think. So within that, you did these things work for you then? So then you then took what you'd learned and what had helped you, and now you do that with others. Would that be?
Yeah, basically. What was I going to say? I was doing web design at the time when all this first started happening, and I started to feel really isolated, really lonely, and obviously being at home all the time, working from home. My grandmother, because they kept taking her bank card off her, she ended up she had congestive heart failure, so they kept taking her bank card off her, and she ended up in hospital. And then she came out of hospital and she needed care, and because I was like there, I ended up being, I ended up doing the caring.
Still doing
even
that?
though my mother continued to. No, I moved. I left there September last month.
Okay. Last month.
So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, I've been doing a lot of stuff to kind of heal my inner child and have the confidence to break away, really.
Okay. So so that was the path that kind of guided you to your own healing, and then you were doing sort of technical stuff. What was the inspiration behind you then becoming a practitioner? Because lots of people go and get, and seek help, and they get helped, and then they go off and carry on or do whatever they're doing. But you actually, something within your process inspired, I'm going to say, use the word inspired. Something happened that kind of took you on the direction of, oh, well, actually, no, this is what I want to do with my life. This is what I want to do. This is how I want to help people. Do you know where that came from?
Yeah, I reached a point where I just I couldn't function very well doing web design anymore, and I used to procrastinate a lot, and the only thing that I was really interested in was learning about therapy and philosophy. So I started thinking that this is what I need to do for a living. So at that point, that was when I went down that route.
The practitioner route.
Yeah.
So what have you learned about yourself within that journey, within that sort of what led you there, and then what made you think, well, actually, this is what would you say was your learning of you? What did you learn about you?
I'd also add to that there was a lot of kind of derealization.
On that not many people understand what you mean by derealization. What do you mean by that?
I started to realize that this isn't reality, is just a kind of projection of what we have going on in our own heads. We all perceive things differently, and I also wanted to know why my mother was the way she was, I suppose. I wanted to understand, more about my family in general, because I had a lot of anger, and I kind of needed to heal it. I had a lot of anger, not just from what she did there, but I had a lot of anger from childhood, and a lot of issues from childhood. And like I said, weird things happened. So,
Is that what
which
you
I got.
is that what you describe as derealization then, sort of unpacking? So I haven't heard that term either, but is it the unpacking of your childhood so that whatever reality, because realization is connected to reality, so what you perceived as real as a child, by working on your child and your inner child, you were able to realize that it wasn't necessarily what you had taken on. And so is derealization the same as releasing negative behaviors and patterns? I'm trying to connect it in my head and make it clear for me, and also for anyone that's watching. So is the derealization sort of the releasing, the realization of what was, and that it might not have been what it was, but it could be something else, and letting go of your previous belief systems? Is that right? No? Yes? No?
No, not exactly. Um,
Okay.
the family's like, I don't want to go into
No, I don't want you to
completely
go
what
into.
happened, but
I don't want. I just want
um,
to understand the term derealization. That's what, because I was like, I kind of have an idea. Well, obviously, the idea that I had wasn't what it is. So it's not about telling me the examples of what it is, but like sort of just, what does that term mean to you? Derealization.
just realizing that reality's not real. And
That's a
these
huge
families,
concept for some people to grasp hold of.
yeah, I know, but it's the truth.
And this is speak your truth. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
And there was a lot of gaslighting. There was a lot of gaslighting, a lot of like I say, this family issue. And my grandmother she'd always done a lot of gaslighting as well, but I didn't realise it at the time. Only looking back on it now, I realise the extent of what
And
I grew up in.
so much of it is done unconsciously, for the people that are actually doing it. Some do it on purpose, but a lot of people actually don't know that what they're doing, it's what they've learned, and what,
Yeah.
and they, whether they have or haven't done any work on themselves. And I think I'm going to say something, even though you haven't said this, but what's coming to me is one of the most beneficial things for any individual to do is to stop putting blame on those that hurt them and did certain things, whether it's gaslighting or any sort of abuse, in all fairness. Is that to learn that in reality they were just doing the best that they could, and it's highly unlikely that they intended to hurt you. And that's quite a big thing to get your head around, because the pain is so deep that it can be quite difficult to kind of think, basically, you ignorant fucker, look what you did to me. You don't even know that you did it, so
Yeah, absolutely.
that can be quite I think that's one of the, it's as much as it's freeing, because you can't, you're releasing blame and attachment to it. It's also, it can be quite annoying to think, all of that happened, and nobody had any idea what they were at.
Absolutely. And that was also, like you say, growing up in that, it normalized it for me. And I was abusive to my own daughter without realizing it. And my wife was normal enough to be able to tell me.
Normal enough, I like that.
You know, this is what you're doing. And it took a few goes, I think, for it to sink in. But I I kind of got the message in the end, and I thought I better deal with this. So yeah, there was a lot of reasons for me taking an interest in therapy.
Yeah, but then you decided to use that all those experiences to then help others to and I know you didn't mention this, it's just that something that I happen to know, but you do you have a men's group that you work with, or specifically with men?
No. Well, I did start one.
Oh, right, okay.
I did start one for men going through divorce.
Oh, right, yeah.
But I changed. I do still have that group, but I don't really. It's not really active. Okay. There wasn't a lot of engagement there.
So, in terms of, because you've spoken about the 4-year legal battle, which was senseless, and the only people that benefited was the legal system, and then men with divorce. Do you think that there is a very different? I mean, each person is different anyway, but do you think that there is actually a masculine difference in going through that system and then going through divorce? Do you think there's a different nuance dynamic to it for men than for women?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. What do you think is the major? So is it something that men experience that women don't, or is it something that, you know, what is that? What would you say was the cornerstone, I suppose, of that difference?
I think that if I'd been a female growing up in the environment I'd grown up in, my experience would have been a lot different. And if I hadn't resolved those issues and taken them into a relationship, as I did take them into a relationship, I would have probably been a victim of violence. I mean, you know, my ex-wife was, well, she was violent anyway. It's probably, you know, she, you know, I was.
So do you think it's down to society's the way that we raise our men and societal expectations that creates that different cornerstone for a man's experience within that?
I think the divorce system, you know, I really don't know, because I look back on it, like I say, and I can see that I definitely had some belief issues. I had some, certainly, you know, my ex-wife said I was emotionally abusive and mentally abusive, and I probably was. And I thought it was clever to manipulate people. And it wasn't until I was at the receiving end of this, you know, well, I suppose I'd always been at the receiving end of this. Like I say, that's why it normalized it for me. But it wasn't until I was kind of, I suppose I moved away from it, and I was with someone normal enough to not experience it as much, that when I went back into it in the family, you know, it stood out to me. And then, and it had been pointed out to me because of her claims that I was mentally and emotionally abusive.
Okay, so what would your what, I suppose I'm going to ask you, is there, what advice would you give to to a man or a woman, I suppose, because I accept that the dynamics are different in terms of how we've been programmed and things. But what advice would you think that is there a nugget of wisdom that you would give to a man finding himself, or a woman, someone finding themselves in this situation of divorce and child custody, because they're all really emotive situations. They're big emotional situations, especially when you're talking about your own children, and then obviously you love someone enough to marry them. So there's all of this big emotional soup or stew. What advice would you give to someone who finds themselves in this place, whether they've had a history, a dysfunctional family or not? I think most of us have experienced some form of dysfunction within our families. I think perhaps the word dysfunction isn't possibly the word, because it's so normal but they're all different types of dysfunction. So what advice, what is your nugget that you would give to someone experiencing in that situation?
It's around 80% of people grow up in dysfunctional families, according to Pete Walker. Nugget of information. I suppose it starts with reflecting on yourself and being mindful, practicing mindfulness.
I love that. Sorry, go on.
Looking, I suppose I always had the ability to look to myself and think, how did I cause this? Have I caused this? I suppose I worked in sales, and so I was kind of taught to kind of hold myself accountable. And so, I suppose to look to myself and ask myself, how am I accountable for this? How have I caused this?
So is that something that you think is, so that is something of benefit for people in that kind of situation to do? That will act as, does it act as a support for them? And I suppose there's an element of realization of self if you're going to be down the mindfulness route.
Absolutely, yeah. You might not be responsible for what's happening to you, but you are responsible for the situation. Ultimately, it's you that's got yourself in it, and it's you're responsible for how you react to it. So responsibility. Look to take responsibility. Don't, as someone said to me, when I was going through the divorce, a friend said to me, stop being a victim. And that's kind of abusive.
That means take responsibility for your part, but don't take all of it, because it's not all yours. I can identify with that. I had an experience once, and someone was like, why are you taking it all as if it all belongs to you? You need to be responsible for what you're responsible for, and and that's one of the things that doesn't happen often in general, is that you allow someone to be responsible for themselves, because if you're not taking it, they have to do something with it, or they have to accept it. But I think the difficulty then is, what do they do with it if they're not going to go down a mindful route, if they're not going to, if they don't have that nugget of what am I responsible for and what am I not responsible for? And then there will be something that is I'm responsible for this, you're responsible for that. And then there's something in the middle that is a joint responsibility, I suppose, within a relationship and a marriage and child. There is a joint thing that you did together. There's something that happened together that you both accept responsibility for, I suppose. I've never thought about it before, because I haven't actually been in that situation in terms of divorce. I have in other situations thought about, well, I'm responsible for this, you're responsible for that, but we are responsible for this in the middle. and that's can be difficult to navigate, especially with somebody that you literally want to tear shreds out of sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I had that conversation with someone actually with regards to my ex-wife, because I said, look, she's got her reality of what happened and I've got my reality of what happened, and somewhere in the middle there's the truth.
We find ourselves, so that's to do with your journey and your experiences and your passion, I suppose, in terms of hypnotherapy and NLP. What and they're kind of both connected, because NLP is about changing those neural pathways, and hypnotherapy is also about creating new ones as well. I'm not big on hypnotherapy, but my understanding is that it's a deep state of relaxation and creating a new pathway, which is something that NLP does also.
Yeah, well, the more we envisage the emotional part of the brain cannot tell the difference between something real and something imagined. So the more, again, this is how, anxiety works. The more we envisage an event, the stronger those neural pathways become. And the more, we either create that event, or the more we envisage ourselves the way we want to be, the stronger those pathways become, and the more we become that person.
Yeah. I want to change the subject kind of completely now, because we find ourselves in interesting times in the world. COVID has been with us for about just under a year, come December. Well, it'll be a year December, even though I think we all became aware of it as something deadly in March. We may have already had it by the time we became aware of it, because I remember being quite ill back in December. But so has that impacted upon your life, not your life, your work? Because it's obviously, how have these times, did you have plans and had to change them? Has it enhanced something? What have you drawn from these, like, last 8 months? What would be your take?
Well, COVID and my work, the detrimental aspect of COVID in regards to my work is that it's taken my focus, and it caused me to go down a negative route, and it's like takes a lot of negative energy. In terms of my work itself, my work has improved. I'm able to do meetups, live workshops, which I advertise on meetup.com. And I'm finding a lot more clients. A lot of people are really suffering with anxiety right now. And a lot of people who, suffer with CPTSD, complex post-traumatic stress disorder, that they are, when you're isolated, all these memories come up and all this bad stuff comes up, and people are really, they're really getting affected by that.
Okay.
And then, there's people at one end of the spectrum that are really, really worried about COVID and scared they're gonna catch it and die. And then at the other end of the spectrum, there's people who are sleeping with saucepans on their head.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because they believe it's an energy. They believe it's an energy weapon.
Well, in all fact, I suppose I, although I'm not sleeping with a saucepan on my head, I think in terms of the energy, the introduction of 5G, which happened while we were all locked down, apparently it was essential that they got the 5G towers up in that time, which I find ludicrous. So I do know that there is an energy around 5G that's really detrimental to us. So on that level, I could possibly understand sleeping, not so much with a saucepan on my head, but I do think that that plays into whatever the bigger picture is. I'm one of those that have my own ideas of what this is all about, but we won't discuss those now, otherwise we'll get banned, and the video won't go out. And they'll just chop it off. But I suppose I'm asking how it has either enhanced or taken away from your work or your life in general. You know, like, are you still able to see your daughter, you know, like lockdown and things like that? Does, you know, because there's very practical things. People haven't been able to go to nursing homes to see parents, elderly parents and things, and I have a grandson that I still haven't met because he's in a hospital and I can't go. So there's practical things that are actually happening to people. So how is it practically and work-wise? Do you think you're navigating it well, I suppose, is one question.
Yeah, that was one of the reasons I moved away from Slough, because my daughter lives in Swindon. So I'm actually staying in Wootton Bassett at the moment, Royal Wootton Bassett, as they like to call it now. Because when I was in Slough, I couldn't see my daughter, and I didn't see my daughter for like 3 months. So I thought, if there's going to be another lockdown, I want to be closer to her. I suppose I could have seen her, because I suppose I could have, but I didn't. I don't know.
Well, it would have just made it more difficult.
Yeah, and the laws were that you weren't meant to travel more than 5 miles from your home. So
that means I'm never going to eat if that was for me, because I live in the middle of nowhere, so no shops, no nothing within 5 miles. What was I going to ask you? So what are your plans in terms of making plans for the future? How are you doing that? Because this is so uncertain. I mean, there is talk right now of another lockdown, which just, you know, so how are you navigating that? Is it impacting on you because you can work from home, or nay?
Yeah, again, I needed to move away from where I was so that I could be in an environment where there weren't people shouting and carrying on in the background. So that was another reason that I had to move from where I was. I called them laws before, but they're not laws, they're actually rules. So
yeah, no, there are no, they have changed laws, and they have changed stuff so that we're far more restricted. But if I'm not mistaken, the restrictions are actually suggested guidelines that all of a sudden, for some reason, have become law.
Yeah, well, you know, again, you know, this is what I talk about, derealization and nothing being real. You know, they're only laws if enough people believe that they're laws. If enough people said that that's rubbish, I ain't doing that, it wouldn't be law, because you know, it wouldn't be enforceable. So it's about belief. Same as the monetary system. It's only backed by people's belief in it. If people don't believe in it, it collapses.
Yeah, my husband often says that we have to remember that all of this works with our consent. It works because we consent to it, and I think people don't. That's what I suppose. That's one of the most. I can't say. Yeah, it does at times. It really frustrates me. Is this buy-in that people have? But then I think, I mean, I don't watch mainstream media, and every time I hear them start talking about COVID on the radio, I'm like, I'm not interested, because I see a lot of NLP stuff being used. And there is a lot of brainwashing, in my humble opinion, and there's a lot of NLP techniques, there's a lot of mind control techniques that are actually being used by the mainstream media, and to keep people in fear and compliant. But my thing is, why are they agreeing to it? And yet I've just answered the question, because they're, if we want to be free, we really need to turn the TV off and turn off the radio and just get on with our lives.
Absolutely. I tried reading an article on the BBC website yesterday, and it almost exploded my brain.
Sorry.
It's just like you really like, it's just like all over, it's just like my head was like literally hurting from reading it.
Yeah, it is. It does get like that. I heard there was something on the radio, not the radio. I watched something, and they put a snippet of the actual meet, the main media here in Ireland, and I was just like, what? What? And you are, and I keep thinking I'm going to get Tourette's through this, because, and my apologies to anybody with Tourette's, but I am twitching. I find myself twitching a lot as the disbelief, as that as they're trying to put this stuff into me, I'm literally physically rejecting. It's just not sitting well at all.
Yeah, as I say, that the worst thing that you can do, like from either side of the spectrum, is give it your energy. You just got to be kind of like middle of the road on it and just let it go.
I suppose one of the things that I'm really grateful for, and you've mentioned it already, is a mindfulness practice, is a meditation practice, and is that like, what do I want to do? What is it that I want to? And the only thing, when I say it to myself, my logical head and my ego is like, who do you think you are? Nah. But my heart, my mind, my body, everything about me is like, no, Helen, you've just got to really push out this love. You've got to you've got to work on that vibration. And even I do laugh at things because they just make me laugh. But when I see people doing certain things that make me laugh, because I just can't believe the ludicrousness, that I try to change that straight away into, no, bless them, they, and a line from the Bible comes, which is, bless them for, when Christ is on the cross and he goes, forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. That has been almost a constant mantra in my head, Helen, bless them, they really have no idea what they're doing. And meeting people that, because a lot of the people that I associate with, I am challenged because I don't associate completely with people that agree with everything I agree with. But most people are of the same like mind. So when I meet people, I recently met someone and had a conversation with somebody, and I was stunned that they actually had no concept, no idea. There was nothing that I was like, oh, well, you heard of so and so, and they were like, no. And I says, well, that there was no deaths between December, January, February, March, no. And I'm like, well, that the World Health Organization has said to go against lockdown. No. And I'm like, how do you not know these things? And then the reality is that they're watching their reality is just completely different to mine. They're watching the news, they're listening to the government, they're listening to the radio, they're receiving those messages, and the cognitive dissonance of the possibility that your government isn't working in your best interest is too much. So it's just like denial. So I think it's a fascinating time for psychologists, and for people that are interested in how we humans work. Because we're literally all in a goldfish bowl now, being examined. And I'm confident that there are people watching us right now, all of us, and how we're acting collectively, to see how they could do it better next time, to make sure that there is no dissent, that there is no people, and as Gil Scott Heron said, the revolution will not be televised. So yeah.
Well, yeah, I don't know. But I say, I don't know.
It is about holding your head together. I know I've got to keep my head together. So you've shared a few truths while we've been talking, but my final question to you is, what truth would you like to share?
that your perception creates your reality, and by changing your perception, you can recreate your reality.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, well, I'm going to end. So thank you so much for joining me in conversation. Thank you to everyone for watching myself and Mark in conversation on Speak Your Truth. Please subscribe. Oh, Mark, how can people get in touch with you? How do people contact you?
They can go to my website, which is professionalmindchanger.co.uk.
Hold on, Professional Mind Changer. So I'm going to write this .co.uk. I think I have your website anyway. Yeah.
And my Facebook group is Building the Confidence to Live an Abundant and Prosperous Life.
I can tap into that, and I'm not going to write all that down now. So thank you. If anybody wants to contact Mark, his details are down below, as are mine, should you wish to work with me in any way. Be mindful, be careful, be kind, take care of each other, and remember to breathe. Thank you for watching Speak Your Truth Conversations.